And if anybody's got any specific questions, whether it's about the history of the Ethics Commission or what's next or any of the other issues, I'm happy to answer them.
I'm going to come up here and get a second microphone
Okay,
so that we can pass it around.
awesome. I was gonna
You
I was
can hear
gonna
what the
run
question
around and be a...
Anybody who has a question?
Well, I do. Well, yeah.
You're close enough.
Yeah, I know. I was just gonna ask you, do you have a brochure or a pamphlet that you put out the bills that you're working on, or is it always pass the legislation afterwards?
No, so did everybody hear that question?
No.
So she asked if we at Common Cause put out like a brochure of what bills we're working on. And we do that every single year. And this year it's really exciting. I mean, the governor signed 6 priority bills that I had been working on for 7 years. And so that's, I told our staff in New Mexico, it's so exciting because now, I mean, the world is your oyster, you know? I mean, I've been plugging away on these same bills over and over again, and now they've got an opportunity to do more. So I know a couple of things they're going to be working at. Now, this is a short session coming up, and so I always say you have to be ready for everything and prepared for nothing, or vice versa. And it depends on what's on the governor's call. We've heard that the legislators and the governor really want to focus things on what this session is supposed to be about, the budget and fiscal matters, and that they are going to do very few calls for things outside of that, which makes sense because we have money for the first time in over a decade, and we have a lot of programs that were massively slashed by our previous governor that need to be restored. So we may have a bunch of stuff, we may have nothing, but what we're going to be prepared for is we would like to start a conversation around public financing for district court judges. Currently, we have public financing for the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. And then we also have it in Santa Fe and in Albuquerque. And the next logical step is district court, because judges should not be raising money. And this is one of the things where we really get broad bipartisan support on. Another bill that I expect them, I don't know if it will, there may be some administrative work on it done this year, and maybe a small bill passed to make it, but it's around voter rights for formerly incarcerated persons. So in New Mexico, we are better than many, many states. So you can, as a formerly incarcerated person, vote. You just have to finish your probation and parole first. Okay, that's not that great. So there's been a variety of bills. You know, we've got Vermont and Maine where you never lose the right to vote, and you vote from prison. And then we have other places where once you're released from prison, you get your rights restored. And that's what I expect to see here in New Mexico, is once you're released from prison, because the problem happens right now is people get off probation and parole, and they have no idea they can vote. Because there's no piece of paper. I mean, God knows, you can imagine how many pieces of paper they give these people, and they can't put that in there. We've got online voter registration. Just set up a computer, for heaven's sakes, in your waiting room with a sign that says you can register to vote now. So I know that's going to be another bill that I expect. And then there will also be another bill around voting, which is going to be a super wonky bill that Senator Daniel Ivy Soto will be carrying. He did his 50-year election tune-up bill last year that was, 500 pages. Shockingly, not a single other legislator read a single page. No, I mean, they may have read 2 or 3 pages, but seriously, who's reading one of the Daniel epistles? And so, obviously, with a 60-day session, there were mistakes made. So I expect a cleanup bill of the cleanup bill to be introduced. But those are the ones that I know they'll be pushing, especially for this year. And once you get to the next session, there'll be lobby reform bills and a variety of other things. And we'll be also supporting the league with their redistricting measure. Yes, sir.
Should the governor call for House Bill 51 to decriminalize abortion? Where does Common Cause stand on that?
We don't have a position on that. We don't have a position on any right to choose bills. Any other questions?
Two things, in the last session, wasn't the Attorney General included in one of the bills about
Public financing?
Yeah.
The
And that-
Secretary of State was too.
And that didn't pass.
It didn't, and I'm glad you brought that up, Bruce, because I expect to see that happen too. That for statewide races. So you might have a public financing bill for the Secretary of State's office, or for all statewide races, you know.
It did pass.
It did not pass. No, it did not pass. But that's a good question, because then I expect those to be reintroduced as well.
And how would you like to see the election commission improve more than it already is?
I think that one of the things that they are doing right now, and I actually brought a piece of paper so I would remember the date for y'all, but they're putting together some rules right now, and they're going to post their draft rules on October 29th, and it's going to be an open period for written public comments on the rules from October 29th until December 2nd. And they're going 3 draft rules, one around general procedures, one around administrative hearings, and one on recusals. And so I think that seeing them put together these kinds of rules is what's going to make a difference. And seeing people show up and seeing people held accountable. I mean, that's what we have to have as a state for this to be effective, is if we have somebody who's guilty of something, go in front of this commission and they're found guilty. I think that's what we need.
Next question. Well, here, use that.
Is it on?
Yeah, can you hear it?
Can you hear me?
I can.
All right,
Put it
yeah.
up close, you have to put it up close.
Okay, yeah, it's one of these things. You mentioned public financing for judge elections, and I'm just wondering if Common Cause has a position on partisan elections for judges versus like maybe a judge just ought to run on their qualifications instead of on the basis of a political party. Do you have a position on that?
You know, we do. We would much prefer to have either all public financing and all nonpartisan races, or go all to merit selection. Our history of how we elect judges in New Mexico is weird and wonky, and we can thank the voters in 1988 for giving us the only system in the country like ours. Shocking. So what we do now is there's merit selection first, which means the people who know judges and the people who know lawyers, they create commissions, they send up names, they vet them, they interview them, they send them to the governor, people are chosen, which really works and was kind of the thing across the country in the 80s. So we had some attorneys who really wanted to do that. And a lot of our attorneys in the state were like, absolutely not. So now we do that, but then the second election out is going to be a partisan election. And then the third election out is a retention election where you just vote keep them or don't keep them. And so it's just, I have talked to so many legislators about that and talking about how can we change to get rid of the partisan in the middle election. And they have not instilled much confidence in me about getting it done, because they've told me things like, you keep making those comments, Viki, and we'll go back to all partisan all the time. And I'm like, I mean, it's like with the Ethics Commission. We wanted to model the Wisconsin used to have the best ethics commission in the country. It was called the Government Accountability Board, and they had retired judges, and they had control of their own budget. The best of both worlds. Because how do legislators screw around with an ethics commission? Well, they cut their budget, and they can't do investigations, and they can't have staff. And so we went around the state. We're like, why don't we do this? Every Republican legislator we had was like, we can't do that because all the judges in New Mexico, all the former judges in New Mexico are Democrats. There's no Republican. I'm like, there are Republican judges. But it's that pants on fire type, we can't do this because, and that's exactly what we've heard around partisan elections, because it doesn't make any sense. I mean, the Judicial Commission has passed some really great rules around judges, around fundraising and some good stuff, but it doesn't mean anything. I mean, like, they're supposed to not know who's contributing to their campaign. They have to hire a treasurer and a campaign manager to handle that or whatever. But then they go to the event. I mean, they see the people there. I mean, they may not know how much everybody contributed, but I mean, they're not letting a bunch of freeloaders hang out. So it's a struggle, because it would make so much more sense to get rid of the partisan nature, especially around judges, and especially because we're having such an attack on the courts, just like we are having an attack on the media in this country. And, you know, we're trying to do this balance of, you know, yes, we do have some certain bad rulings, but at the same time, we're trying to protect this institution.
This is a different topic. It's one of the goals of New Mexicans for Money Out of Politics. Does Common Cause have a position on open primaries, and do you have a sense of where that either effectively or ineffectively is in the state right now?
It's a tough one. We have been supporting open primaries here at Common Cause New Mexico since I started in 2012, and possibly even before that with Steve Allen. And we have supported allowing declined estates and minor parties to vote. We have not supported a whole free-for-all. And the problem has been is that a lot of our advocate friends keep introducing like 4 different bills, and then when they testify on one bill, they describe all 4, and the legislators are like, huh? So we are working to get people to like get behind one bill instead of having a bunch of different ones out there, and to, you know, we're also working with the parties. I mean, nothing is stopping the parties from doing it themselves. I mean, that's why open primaries just lost their lawsuit that they filed, because there's nothing that is preventing. I mean, that's one of the pieces, is that this is a party, this is a private club, they can do what they want to. And of course, we've also been threatened that the parties could go back to a caucus situation if they wanted to. They could go back to 3 guys in the back room with some cigars if they wanted to. So it's been one of those things that I thought was a no-brainer. I mean, especially with the number of people. I have a lot of our Democrat legislators who tell me, absolutely not, Viki. Independents are nothing but old white racist. I've had that said to me so many times, and I'm like, well, I'm a declined state, I'm getting old, but I can assure you I'm not a racist. And when you look at the party affiliation in this state, it's actually the Democrat Party that has bled everybody to the declined state. So if you look at the numbers from 1980 versus now, Republicans are the same, around that 30-something%. It's the Democrats who, and now, I mean, as we know in this country, people under 25, well over half of them now would have nothing to do with the Republican or Democrat Party, either one. And so I feel like we have some good legislative sponsors. We have some people who really care about this. It's just one of those things where you've got a few of the older folks who don't like it, and they say this could, you know, ruin. They're going to have this roving band of the other party that's going to throw the election, and you know, it's like doing, you know, the perennial story of, you know, the dead people in Espanola voting, you know. Steve Terrell actually quoted me a few years ago saying, I hope they're voting because the living sure aren't. And luckily people knew I didn't really want dead people to vote. But open primaries is something I would love for us to get passed, and would be so nice. And I think we can. I think it's also become contentious in Senate rules around that issue. With just personality sometimes, which is unfortunate, but when you have a citizen legislature that meets so short and has so many bills, things, you know, there's a reason why we say perception is reality in the roundhouse, because reality certainly isn't. I mean, I tell people all the time, I mean, if you don't need to be in the building, don't be there. I mean, these people that just hang out, I'm like, what is wrong with you? I mean, they can get mad at some committee hearing and have nothing to do with you and walk down the hall and see you, and it's over with. I mean, I've been yelled at hundreds of times, and now it's like I get in, do my thing, and shoom, I'm out. Because it's personalities. They're exhausted, you know. It's a difficult, having it such a short session makes it so difficult.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much for having me.
Wait,
I
wait,
appreciate it.
Wait, I have a question.
Well, we gotta let John ask the question.
Do you see any traction or use for the kind of public finance that they're trying to do in the federal level, small donor programs? You know, where you set a limit. If you're a candidate, if you agree to not take donations above a certain amount, then you get into that program and you get the money through that program.
And this is the way a lot of our public financing systems are going these days. And you're getting different tiers, like in New York City and in LA, and they're doing, you know, a 6-to-1 match, and we fought like hell in Santa Fe to get a little lousy 1-to-1 match. I mean, these people put us over the coals for a long time on that public financing bill. And I think it's been difficult, which is why we're trying the democracy dollars in Albuquerque, which will be on the ballot in Albuquerque next month, which will still give them their initial dollar per voter, which is what the Albuquerque does. Santa Fe is a set amount. As a city councilor, you get $15,000. As a mayoral candidate, you get $60,000. In Albuquerque, the councilors get $1 per registered voter in their district. So it's different amounts depending on, which can be not so great for, you know, Councilor Clarissa Pena, who has the lowest voter registration. And so they're still going to get that, but we're going to add a Seattle-type democracy dollars on top of that. So everybody is going to get a $25 democracy dollar that they can give to the publicly financed candidate of their choice. That will then be, because the matching funds, you know, the way Santa Fe and Albuquerque were designed were, you're rolling along as a publicly financed candidate, you get to that first reporting period, and your privately financed opponent outraised you bad. So that would do matching trigger funds. It would trigger matching funds to you. And the year after the Citizens United decision, there was an Arizona Free Enterprise decision which struck down the matching portion of public financing. It upheld the rest of public financing, which I always, you know, try to find that silver lining. Like in Citizens United, 8-to-1, they said, but of course you'll have disclosure. Shockingly, Clarence Thomas said, no, we don't even want disclosure. But I think that trying to look at these in different ways, it's been more difficult in New Mexico because we already had those systems. And quite frankly, we have a lot of what I call my public financing purists who are like, wait a minute. If they're accepting, you know, $200, then they shouldn't get public financing at all. I mean, they don't even want people, and I mean, they're even like, oh, that $5 is too, and I'm like, seriously? Okay, and I always say it's not the 90s anymore. We don't have John McCain and Russ Feingold and Bikra and everybody kumbayaing for campaign finance. But public financing is one of those few things I was talking about earlier that has been reaffirmed by the courts, which is why we should keep pushing it. And I think it's interesting, and we'll see if the voters in Albuquerque, I mean, that's been a ride. I've been trying to update that system since 2012, and they've done everything they can to stop it. And you know, and you know, same thing here in Santa Fe. We've been working on updating that and finally ended up with a 1-to-1 match. But you know, again, public financing is super popular in Santa Fe still. We have all but one of the council candidates taking it, and she got in late, and the other people are not contested. So, you know, and even in Albuquerque or 2 years ago, Tim Keller took it. And before we had Richard Berry actually took it his first time. So we used to have, and all of even our Republican counselors in Albuquerque, except for Trudy Jones, who's just one of those, I hate public financing, but they've all taken it. So I still think it's really viable. The problem is, in that free enterprise case, the courts literally said, this cannot be about leveling the playing field. This cannot be about leveling the playing field. Okay, fine, SCOTUS. I mean, duh, of course it's about leveling the playing field. It's about allowing people to run who don't have a lot of money or friends who have a lot of money. The other thing that it really does is it allows candidates to actually talk to voters instead of donors. I was talking to a congressman, I don't even remember what state he was from, recently, and he said, you know, Viki, when y'all talk about dialing for dollars and how we're not doing our job, he goes, it's actually even worse than that. He goes, yeah, we all have to go across, and I have pictures of the buildings right there where they go in their little booths, and they make phone calls for 4 or 5 hours a day, every day, raising money for the next election. He said, it's not just that we're not doing any work. He said, think about it. No matter how good you are, no matter how in touch you are with your community, if you hear nothing but rich people problems for 5 hours a day, every single day, after a while you're going to think, it really is the tax code. That's the problem. He said it's much worse than what we think. And so when you just continue to have that, and the more public financing we have, you know, we have people that can actually do that work. I'll never forget our governor, this is the last thing I'll say, our governor, the first time she was elected to Congress, I ran into her the day after the election. And it was her, I was like, yay, congratulations. I mean, I've known her since she was a county commissioner. Yay, it's New Mexico. You know, we all know everybody. And she said, Viki, you're never going to believe this. I mean, this is literally the next day. She said, yeah, my campaign people told me I needed to raise $1 million before the end of the year for next election. And I said, what? She said, exactly. I need $1 million for the next term before I've even been sworn in on this term, is what the money people, and that's, you know, we have progressive campaign managers who fight us on public financing at the local level. Why would they fight us? Because they say, well, you know, if you're in Santa Fe or Albuquerque, it's okay, but what if we want to move them up? Those races don't have public financing, and then they won't know the rich people. So I got Tim Keller's people to call them and say, we still met with rich people, we just didn't ask them for money, and we met with everybody else too. I mean, it's just shocking almost that, you know, every chance that somebody gets, they're going to, and that's, you know, try to pull something. And that's the way it is with these types of bills. We know we can never pass a bill and be done. Not only do you have to make sure it's implemented correctly, but you also have to make sure that whatever new loophole they come up with, I mean, we already have that. You know, we tried to pass all kinds of things to prevent that around disclosure, and we still haven't done it. So we'll get it done. But again, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.